I feel like I really understand that we have a responsibility to change the narrative around what we are delivering to young people in the classroom. But I would describe the actual day-to-day learning side of things very challenging. He's charming, he's loaded, and he waltzed straight into one of the most scrutinized families on the planet. While the world was busy watching the royals fall apart at the seams, this well-dressed property developer quietly slipped in through the side door, won the heart of a princess, and built himself a life most people could only dream of. He smiled understandingly, much more than understandingly. It was one of those rare smiles with a quality of eternal reassurance in it. But who is Edoardo Mapelli Mozzi really? Because behind the monogram shirts and the luxury penthouses there is a story packed with broken engagements, a secret child, a wedding the queen didn't even know was happening, and family drama that would make your jaw hit the floor. Stay with me because this one goes deep. The man the tabloids couldn't keep up with. Let's start with the basics because even the basics are extra when it comes to this man. Edoardo Mapelli Mozzi. Go on, say it slowly. Edoardo Mapelli Mozzi. It sounds less like a modern businessman and more like someone who should be commissioning paintings during the Renaissance, right? That's because in a very real sense, he comes from that kind of world. The man Princess Beatrice chose to spend her life with isn't just another wealthy London developer who climbed his way up. Technically, he's a count. Yes, an actual count. His family holds the hereditary title of Count of the Kingdom of Italy, granted back in 1913 by Victor Emmanuel III to all male descendants of the Mapelli Mozzi line. Now Italy may have abolished royal titles in 1946 when the monarchy fell, but that hasn't exactly stopped families like his from holding on to that identity. And honestly, when your lineage stretches back centuries, it's not something you just casually drop. In fact, Edito's ancestry reportedly traces all the way back to a son of King Federico II of Sicily. Let that sink in. We're not talking about a family tree. We're talking about a historical archive. Generations of nobility, land, influence, the kind of heritage that predates most modern nations. And the family hasn't exactly downsized over time. They still own the Villa Mapelli Mozzi in northern Italy, a 15th-century estate music that started life as a monastery and now operates as a luxury retreat. So yes, while some people marry into royalty, Edoardo walked in with his own version of it tucked neatly into his background. But here's where it gets interesting. Because Edo isn't some dusty aristocrat living off inherited wealth and old portraits. He's very much a man of the present. Educated at the prestigious Dragon School in Oxford, then Radley College, and later earning a master's degree in politics from the University of Edinburgh. He had all the right doors open to him, and he walked through them. By his early 20s, he had already founded Bonda Property, a high-end development and interior design company catering to London's elite. He's polished, connected, ambitious, and let's be honest, very easy on the eyes. But beneath that carefully curated image, there's a far more complicated story. One involving love, loss, a child who changed everything, and a royal wedding that almost slipped under the radar. So before all of that unfolded, where did this count with a career really come from? And what parts of his story don't quite fit the fairy tale? The empire he built, Band Property. Before he was the husband of a princess, Edoardo Mapelli Mozzi was building an empire brick by luxury brick. At 23, fresh out of university and armed with family connections and an eye for design, he launched Bonda Property in 2007. The concept was simple on paper. Find undervalued pockets of London, develop them into stunning high-end homes, and sell them to people with more money than most of us will ever see. In practice, the man turned it into a machine. By the time he was linking arms with Princess Beatrice on red carpets, Bonda had overseen property developments worth more than $875 million. Let that number sit for a second. That's not a business. That's a dynasty. Bonda became known for its sleek interiors, its obsessive attention to detail, and its almost theatrical approach to what luxury living should look like. Edoardo, who later revealed he is dyslexic, something he and Beatrice actually have in common, channeled everything into the visual and spatial world of design. His Instagram is basically a portfolio of drool-worthy homes, each one looking more like a five-star hotel than a place where actual humans are supposed to live. He also made no secret of his political opinions along the way. Ahead of the 2016 London mayoral election, he wrote an opinion piece for Property Week, urging the future mayor to push for more central London redevelopment. He called out politicians by name, criticizing Andrea Leadham and Jeremy Corbyn on social media, even using the hashtag #I'mWithHer on Twitter on the night of the 2016 US election. This was a man who had opinions and wasn't afraid to say so. That's quite the contrast to the carefully managed silence most people married into royal circles are expected to perform. But here's where it gets complicated. For every glittering success, there's been a shadow of controversy. Property experts and writers at Forbes were quick to push back on BA's claim that they were developing homes in undervalued parts of London. When the company's latest project was located in Notting Hill, one of the most expensive and sought-after postcodes in all of Britain, critics were quick to note that there was nothing undervalued in Notting Hill. The descriptor started to feel more like marketing than reality. And then there's the situation in Australia, which is the kind of story that makes you wheeze. Bondi was linked to a planned development called the Mostad Ocean Club, a high-end beachfront project on the Gold Coast of Australia that was promoted as a major international venture. The kind of announcement that gets press releases and glossy renders and breathless coverage. But the dream didn't survive contact with reality. The masthead project collapsed. The company behind it went into administration. And just like that, one of BA's most ambitious international moves became a cautionary tale. Reports emerged about this setback came just as Edoardo had jetted off to Palm Beach, Florida for a design conference, which depending on your perspective, was either impeccably timed or spectacularly poorly timed. Still, Bondi keeps moving, keeps building, and Edoardo keeps showing up to conferences in pastel blazers, talking about architecture with the confidence of a man who has never let a collapsed development knock his stride. But the business, this is only half the story. Because long before BA was making headlines, Edoardo Mapelli Mozzi had a very different life planned, one that involved a very different woman. And that story, nobody saw it coming. The ex-fiancé and the son named Wolfie. Here's where things get properly soap opera dramatic. Before Princess Beatrice, there was Dra Huang. And Dara Hang is not a woman you forget. She is an American architect, Harvard-educated, internationally successful, absolutely stunning, and for several years she and Edoardo were the picture of a perfect modern couple. They got engaged around 2014. They were building a life together. And in 2016, they had a son. His name is Christopher Wolf Mapelli Mozzi, though literally everyone calls him Wolfie. And if you've seen the photos, you know that Wolfie is perhaps the most adorable child to have ever been adjacent to a royal family. But by 2018, the engagement was off. The details of what went wrong have never been fully aired in public. Neither Dra nor Edoardo has chosen to make the specifics of their split into tabloid fodder, which honestly makes them more dignified than half the royal family. What we do know is that they separated, that they share custody of Wolfie, and that Dra, clearly not one to sit quietly in anyone's shadow, moved on and built her own impressive career in design. She even started a company called HB Design Group, which is thriving. But here's the layer that makes this whole thing dramatically interesting. Dra and Edoardo's breakup didn't happen in a vacuum. Within months of their split, Edoardo had begun dating someone new, someone considerably more high-profile, someone whose last name is Windsor. The timing raised eyebrows. It always does in these situations. Was the relationship already developing before the engagement formally ended? Nobody said anything publicly. Nobody ever does. But the timeline was tight enough to make people speculate. And in the royal gossip world, speculation is practically its own currency. What made the situation more complicated was Wolfie himself. Because Wolfie didn't disappear when the relationship ended. He was right there, a living, breathing reminder of Edoardo's previous life. And when Beatrice and Edoardo got serious, Wolfie became part of that picture, too. Princess Beatrice, a princess of the British royal family, became a stepmother to a little boy named Wolfie, and she has, by all accounts, embraced that role completely. Reports suggest the co-parenting arrangement between DRA and Edoardo is genuinely amicable. DRA took Wolfie to Florida for Christmas in 2025, posting Instagram stories of him at mini-golf under a caption referencing a Florida Christmas. Meanwhile, Edoardo was photographed at a design event in Palm Beach that same trip, which if nothing else, proves that whatever happened between those two, they've managed to keep things civilized for the sake of their son. That's rare. That's actually impressive. But the Wolfie situation would go on to shape the entire narrative of Beatrice and Edoardo's relationship, from the wedding to the family photos to the very structure of their household. And speaking of that household, how did any of this even start? How does a count with a complicated past end up falling for a princess? The answer involves a friendship that goes back decades and one very fancy party. Early life, the count in the making. Let's rewind all the way back, because Edoardo Mapelli Mozzi didn't just stumble into royal life. He was practically born into it. He arrived on November 19, 1983 at the Portland Hospital in London, a place long favored by the British elite, including royals. His father, Edoardo Mapelli Mozzi, had a backstory that sounds almost fictional. Born in Argentina, raised in Italy, educated in England, and somehow ended up representing Great Britain in alpine skiing at the 1972 Winter Olympics. After hanging up his skis, Alex reinvented himself as an international art dealer and even became a Fellow of the Royal Society of Arts. Edo's mother, Nikki Williams Ellis, carved out her own path in politics, charity, and design, later remarrying and expanding the family. That meant Edo grew up with a blend of aristocracy, politics, and creativity, and a half-brother from his mother's second marriage. Tragedy struck when his stepfather, Christopher Shale, died in 2011. But Edo turned grief into action, co-founding a charity that built Rwanda's first grass cricket stadium and even cycling overnight through London to raise funds. Now that you know where he came from, let's talk about how he found his way to Princess Beatrice. Because the story of how a count met a princess is anything but ordinary. How a count wins a princess. Here's the thing about Edoardo and Beatrice. This was not a chance encounter. This was not a royal Cinderella moment where two strangers locked eyes across a ballroom and everything changed. This was something far more interesting. A love story that had been marinating for decades without either of them fully realizing it. The Mapelli Mozzi family and the Yorks, Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson, have been close friends for years. That's not a rumor. That's something both families have confirmed publicly. When Edoardo and Beatrix's engagement was announced in 2019, Nikki Williams Ellis released a statement saying quite pointedly that her family had known Beatrice for most of her life. These weren't strangers. These were family friends. The kind of connection that means you've probably been at the same Christmas parties, the same charity galas, the same summer events for the better part of 2 decades without it ever becoming romantic. And then somewhere around September 2018, something shifted. The press didn't catch wind of it until November 2018, but by then the relationship was already underway. Edoardo had just ended his engagement to Dara Huang. Beatrice had ended her long relationship with Dave Clark in 2016. Both of them were unattached. Both of them were circling the same social stratosphere.